So the backstory to Proverbs comes to us from 1 Kings chapter 3. It says, "At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said," imagine this, "ask whatever you want and I'll give it to you." King Solomon asks for wisdom. He said, "You have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I'm a little child, and I don't know how to carry out my duties." So Solomon is awakened to the idea that he's in over his head, or that he's working above his pay grade. And so he asks for wisdom. But listen to what the Lord says to Solomon post this ask. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings." I don't know about you, but if I was antiquing this weekend, and I was doing other things. But if I were, and I found a beautiful lamp that when I rubbed it, a genie came out of it, and I was granted 3 wishes, I'm pretty sure one of those wishes would not be wisdom from me. I don't know about you, but it matters. The reality is we live in a culture that values 15 minutes of fame more than a lifetime of accumulated wisdom. We prize youthfulness, while the ancients honored age and they esteemed gray hair. They valued hard-earned, hard-learned wisdom. Why? Because they understand and understood that wisdom is key to everything else. Wealth without wisdom is a disaster waiting to happen. We see it all around us. In fact, you look at general statistics of large lottery winners, and 94% go bankrupt within 5 years of receiving the lottery. Knowledge without wisdom, power without wisdom, I can guarantee you someone or something is going to get used or abused. We see it in our world all the time. So, if I had to reduce the book of Proverbs to the least common denominator, it would be the 2-word title of this series: Get Wisdom. And that's where we're going to start this weekend. Simple, succinct, significant. Get wisdom. Solomon says in Proverbs 4, "Take this to heart. Do what I tell you. Live. Sell everything and buy wisdom. Forage for understanding. Don't forget one word. Don't deviate an inch. Never walk away from wisdom. She guards your life. Love her. She keeps her eye on you. And above all, and before all, do this. Get wisdom." See, what Solomon is doing here and over and over and over again in the Proverbs is he's doubling down, making sure we understand the significance of wisdom. And it feels like circular reasoning because it is. He keeps, for some reason, telling us the same thing over and over in 20 different ways. It's almost as if he knows that we have short attention spans. The NIV says, "Though it cost you all you have, get understanding." So the question is, how do we do that? How do we go about pursuing and seeking wisdom? That's going to be what we're looking at over the next 4 weeks. But get this, first and foremost. This comes directly from the last verse that Jason read to us. And throw this slide up. Wisdom comes from God. Right? Wisdom's rootedness, the place where it originates, is from God. And here's the really cool thing that we're going to talk about in a moment, but God planted seeds of wisdom in you and in me and in the earth and in science and in math and in the stars and in the plants and in all of created order. God has sprinkled his wisdom for us to find. Millions of sources for us to glean the wisdom and encounter the wisdom of God. So I want to talk about 3 places this morning where we can seek wisdom. And these 3, I think, are the most simple, everyday, ordinary ways to encounter the wisdom of God. First one is this: trial and error, baby. Trial and error. One way wisdom teaches us to capture her is to listen to our lives. Listen to what God has been doing in us. About 15 years ago, I picked up a book by Frederick Buechner called Listening to Your Life. If you don't have it in your library, go buy it this week. He says this: listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is. In the boredom and pain of it, no less than in excitement and gladness, touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in last analysis, all moments are key moments. And life itself is grace. All moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. Listen to your life. Now, I know a lot of people, and you do too, who have followed Christ for 25 years, but they don't have 25 years of experience. They have 1 year of experience lived 25 times. Because they don't listen to their life. They're not listening, and they're making the same mistakes over and over. I've lived in decades of my life where I just keep falling into the same stupid stuff over and over and over and over again, until one day I wake up to the wisdom of, oh wait, God might be doing something here. Perhaps I should pay attention. We all say it, right? History repeats itself. Why? Because we don't freaking listen. So we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. What is that? Insanity and foolishness. And yet we dance in insanity and foolishness all the time, while the world itself is geared to impart wisdom to us so that we don't do that over and over and over again. I had a professor in grad school who loved to ask the question, what makes you cry? What makes you pound your fist on the table? What makes you break out in joy? He said, if you know what makes you cry or what makes you pound your fist on the table or what brings you immense joy, you're getting very close to God-ordained passion for your life. In other words, what makes you sad and mad and glad? Buechner says it this way: the voice we should listen to most as we choose a vocation is the voice that we might think we should listen to least. And that's the voice of gladness. He said, what can we do that makes us gladdest? This is like what Psalm 37 says, that God actually gives you the desires of your heart. Right? The things that you desire most, God put those in you. And so when you desire something and awaken something into you, listen to what's happening in that space. Buechner says, the place where our deepest gladness and the world's deepest need meet, that is the place where we will make a difference in the world. Many years ago, there was a doctor named Martin Selman, who at one point was the president of the American Psychological Association. And he says, your way of explaining events to yourself determines how helpless you become or how energized you become when you encounter everyday setbacks as well as momentous defeats. Right? So two people can go through the exact same experience, and one comes out bitter and one comes out better because of how they process and how they listen to that within their life. Think about people like Joseph in our Bible. He was a victim of injustice. His family literally sold him into slavery. He didn't do anything wrong. He was a little arrogant. But beyond that, maybe not a really good brother, but beyond that, he spends 13 years in an Egyptian dungeon. How do you survive that? I think part of it was about how Joseph processed it, how Joseph listened to those things. He didn't sit and beat himself over and over and over for the things that had gotten him into that place. He said, no, God is doing something, and I don't know what God is doing. I don't know what's happening in this space, but I'm going to listen to see where God is showing up in the midst of this craziness. And so we get to a point when he meets his brothers who sold him into slavery, and he says, what you intended for harm, God turned to good. How we listen to our lives changes how we live our lives. Another way that we can get wisdom is to surround ourselves with the right people. In 1979, Andy Metzloff stuck his tongue out at a baby. Now, what happened next rocked the world of infant psychology. The baby stuck its tongue back out at him. Metzloff did some groundbreaking studies that came to an amazing conclusion. Check this out. He says, imitative behavior in infants begins as soon as 42 minutes after birth. Neuroscientists have since traced this imitative tendency to a unique set of neurons in our brains called mirror neurons. And those neurons fire whether you're performing a certain action or whether you're simply observing a specific action. Now that has some profound implications and ramifications. Romans 12:3 says, do not be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world. That's hard. The world shapes me regularly because I'm surrounded by culture, and often we consume it without any filter whatsoever. But Paul says, instead of being conformed, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now let's break this down a little bit more. In Proverbs 12:26, Solomon says, the righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray. Now, Mike's going to talk in 2 weeks about wisdom and friendship and what the Proverbs have to say about that. But what Solomon is saying right here in this is, you show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You have to surround yourself with the right people. Now, hear me, church. This does not mean you surround yourself with people who look, act, and think just like you. That's foolishness, not wisdom. Why do we surround ourselves? Why do we enter into people and places that are different than us? To get wisdom. And the goal of those conversations is not to win an argument, right? My mom and I are as far different spectrum as you can possibly imagine, right? She would be over there in that pew and I'd be over there in this pew. Now, we love each other. We're very similar, but we're also very different. And I can go into that relationship with my mom, who, by the way, is brilliant, has like 4 master's degrees and is a conservative feminist and is just an amazing woman. And I can go into that relationship, and sometimes I do, and I think, how do I convince my mom she's wrong? I just need her to know she's wrong. My life would be so much better if she knew she was wrong. But that's a lie. Because what I should be doing in that place is saying, what do I have to learn from this person who's so different than me? What can she teach me? What wisdom is in that place? Because again, she's brilliant. So sitting and listening and learning from her is the way of wisdom, not foolishness when I try to create an argument to be right. See, I think this is where it starts. Wisdom is not homogeneous. If all you ever do is hang out with people who are like you, I think you're one-dimensional, and so does Solomon. I love you, but you're one-dimensional. And you're missing a world of wisdom that God has waiting for you. According to science of social networking, if you have a friend who smokes, you will be 61% more likely to smoke. If you have a friend who is obese, you'll be 45% more likely to gain weight over the next 2 to 4 years. And if your friends are happy, there's a likelihood that you're going to be more happy. But here's where it gets crazy. If a friend of your friend's friend, so 3 degrees of separation, is happy, you're likely 6% more likely to be happy. And you might think, 6%, Rustin, who cares? Did you know if today I increased your salary by 10%, that would only raise your happiness scale by 2%? So your friend's friend's friend has more influence on your happiness than me giving you 10% more money. It matters. Who we have in our lives matters. So what does that have to do with wisdom? Well, if you want to get good at pickleball, what do you have to do? Practice. But it might help for you to play with people who are better than you. Right? We have a pickleball court at our new house, and our Aunt Lori is a pickleball pro. And she came, and in a matter of a weekend, she taught us a wealth of pickleball knowledge. More than I could have gained by playing with most of you in this room. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Some of us need to get around people. We need to bump into other people's passions. Right? People who are passionate about something, sit with them, learn from them, pull it up. Dennis loves science. Half the time when Dennis and I are talking about things, I have no idea what he's talking about. But I leave that and I go to my Gmail and my Google and I search for the things that he's saying and I read things and I become wiser because of my relationship with Dennis and bumping into his passion for science. My best friend, Brendan, who's a mechanic, I could not, if your car's ever broken, don't call me. I'll call AAA for you. That's as good as I got. But Brendan can diagnose all of that, and he'll talk to me for hours about what it looks like to diagnose electrical systems in a car. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, whoa, geez, I have no idea what any of that thing you just said is. And yet, bumping into his passion makes me wiser. We need to get out of our comfort zones and start bumping into people's passion and meeting people differently than us and people who think and act and engage differently than us, because at that, we will be sitting at the feet of God's wisdom, not just ours. The third way that I think that we can engage wisdom is to curate holy curiosity. Albert Einstein said this: the important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when one contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries to merely comprehend a little of this mystery each day. And he closes by saying this: never lose holy curiosity. Romans 1:20 says it this way: for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. Right? What Paul is saying to us is like, when God created all of this, he sprinkled all of the invisible wisdom that we seek in everything. 1 Kings reads it this way in chapter 4. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. But who's counting? He described plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He taught about animals and birds and reptiles and fish. Men and women of all nations came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by the kings of the world who had heard of this wisdom. And then Solomon writes in Proverbs 25:2, for the glory of God is to conceal a matter, but to search out the matter is the glory of kings. Right? It's as if God said, I have all these little presents that I've sprinkled throughout creation. All this insight and understanding and wisdom. And my heart for you is that you care enough to seek it. Some famous guy named Jesus said, seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. This, in fact, is written as an imperative. Keep seeking, keep finding. Keep knocking, doors will keep being opened. Do you know that as children, we used to ask about 125 questions a day? Some of you are like, my kid asks way more than that. Adults ask 6 questions a day. So somewhere between our childhood and our adulthood, we've lost 119 questions a day. I think we got to get some of those back. I think we got to get some deep curiosity. In fact, Jesus asks about 307 questions in the Gospels, and 183 questions are asked to Jesus, but guess how many he answers? Depending on how you look at it, less than 6. It's almost if Jesus is telling us that the questions are more important than the answers. That the questions lead us somewhere. About a month ago, Tammy and I were talking on my drive home, and we do that every Monday to talk about pastoral care stuff. And we also talk about our personal lives, and we both have therapists. And in 1 week, both of our therapists said, you need to get curious instead of judgmental. When I come to conversations with my mom, often I'm starting in a place of judgment instead of a place of curiosity. But if I just turn and listen to my life a little differently and start saying, what's in this for me? What's God doing here? What's this all about? Why did I meet that random person? Why did I walk in that line in the grocery store? Why is that a-hole the one that bothers me so much? And I get a little curious. And in the midst of it, I meet the wisdom of God laid down from the foundations of the earth. Get wisdom.